Good evening. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole Subcommittee. It is December 16th. Please rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call of the members. Councilor Agenzio.
Here.
Here. Councilor Giannino.
Here.
Here. Councilor Guarino Sawaya.
Here.
Here. Councilor Haas.
Here.
Here. Councilor Jaramillo is absent. Councilor Kelly.
Here.
Here. Councilor McKenna. Here. Councilor Novoselsky. Absent. Councilor Silvestri.
Here.
Here. Councilor Zambudo.
Here.
Here. And Council President Cogliandro.
Here.
Here. A quorum is present. There's two items on this evening's Committee of the Whole agenda. That is a communication from the Chief of Planning and Community Development requesting adoption of the city's housing production plan, and also a communication relative to the housing development incentive zones.
Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Tom Skorowski, 281 Broadway. I am here to talk on both of the items here tonight, but I'll start with the housing production plan. As discussed in our November meeting, we don't need anything up on the computer for now, I guess for the folks at Riviera TV, great. The housing production plan is a 5-year plan to create the right kind of housing in the right locations across various income spectrums. It was created with a working group of 12 professionals. It was composed over a period of 18 months. We had 2 public meetings, an online survey of almost 300 Riviera residents, and ultimately crafted the plan that's in front of you this evening. This plan is not time sensitive. It's not anything where our hair is on fire and we need to approve this tonight. I understand that it's a lengthy document and one that requires more deliberation and discussion. That's certainly why I'm here tonight and why I'll be here both for the City Council and anyone in the viewing public who has questions about this project. I'd love to talk with you all through the implications of this housing production plan. And we'll start with a few brief remarks, much more brief than my last presentation, I promise, and then I'll open it up to any questions you might have. So, approving this housing production plan would basically create a roadmap for how we're going to produce the right kind of housing in the right location across income spectrums. But it is just that. It's a roadmap. It gives us a toolkit with various tools in our toolbox. By approving this plan, what we would be doing is showing a good faith effort to the state that we're working to meet our 40B requirement of having at least 10% of our housing stock be deemed affordable. Today we're at 7%. By some estimates and projections in our plan, if we're going at our current pace, we'll actually drop to roughly 5.5% in a few years. So approving this plan would show the state we're taking a good faith effort to close that affordability gap. And in at least year 1, this would provide for safe harbor from any 40B development in the city. And then in subsequent years, the plan would have to be certified, and basically this would be us showing we're actually starting to close that gap with affordable housing production. And for years 2 through 5, if we certify the plan, we'll continue to be sheltered from 40B developments. This plan, just by adopting it, the council would send this to the state for its approval. Okay, that's what this plan does. What this plan does not do, and here I'll particularly reference a misleading flyer that went out this past weekend, this does not dismantle our zoning ordinance. No votes that you take whenever this is approved would dismantle our zoning ordinance. Okay, this would not require the city to purchase properties from certain people to be held aside for affordable housing development. That is not the case. It would not impose a property tax surcharge on Riviera residents. Approving this plan just gives us the toolkit that we can then use at our discretion. We can choose not to use some of the tools in the toolkit altogether. We can choose to use some of them and use them intelligently and use them in a way that will still serve the interests of the city. And one particular note on that regard I'd mention is with regard to the Central Avenue parking lot. Okay, so there is a suggestion, one of the tools in the toolkit, if you will, to redevelop the Central Avenue parking lot for affordable housing. And there's been a lot of discussion and concern in the community that in so doing, we would take away parking from seniors. You could conceive of a plan where we're redeveloping that lot and still preserving parking for seniors, and that would be our intent to do so. But we also might just not redevelop that lot altogether. It's just a tool in the toolbox. So nearly every single tool in that toolbox, for us to use it, it would require further vote and authorization from the City Council. This vote just approves the plan and this roadmap. It does not improve every individual action item. It does not dismantle our zoning ordinance or any of the other sort of alarmist things that we saw in that flyer. And the property tax surcharge in particular that was mentioned in the flyer would not only require council action, it would require a ballot referendum. It would require all the citizens in Revere to approve it. So just wanted to clear that component up. And the flyer also mentioned something about us trying to push this through while folks are distracted for the holidays. That's not the intent. The only reason I want to get this approved is because I want to move on from the plan and I want to start getting stuff done. Contrary to popular belief, some of us in government like to actually get things done and move things along and not just delay and delay and delay. I happen to be one of those people, and so does my team. But we don't need to approve it tonight. We don't need to approve it anytime soon, and it certainly was not our intent to push it through on the holidays. It just happened to fall on this meeting. So before I get to questions, I want to just go over a few pieces of misinformation that I saw on that flyer that I think are just worth putting out, because I think what really bothered me about seeing that flyer go out is I knew there would be people at tonight's meeting who would be worried and upset by what they saw and worried by what fundamentally were just mischaracterizations of what this plan is and what it represents. So first of all, the plan, the flyer noted that our plan proposes to eliminate the minimum lot size requirements in the city. That's patently false. The plan suggested that in certain areas we would reduce the minimum lot size requirements for building in the city. And that's because the plan showed that if you look at the vast majority of the parcels in the city, 68% of the parcels in the city are currently non-conforming, which basically means you couldn't do the same thing, you couldn't build the same structure that's there today because our zoning prohibits it. So all we're saying is maybe we need to right-size our zoning to account for the reality on the ground. And again, this is just a proposal that would require further council votes in the future to actually get approved. The second thing, it noted we would allow apartment buildings by right across the city. That's also not true. It would, though, allow for, if the council authorized it at a later date, 2 and 3 family units to be allowed by right. And that actually came from our rigorous community engagement process that we underwent through this project, where we had a lot of folks in the community that were disappointed that we are strictly talking about building affordable housing, which means deed-restricted affordable housing that is set aside for people that meet a certain income spectrum. They're worried about what happens to the people in between, right? You have these people who are eligible for affordable housing on the one side. You have people that are eligible for the luxury housing that's being built on the other hand. And what about the people in between? Frankly, what about the people at City Hall? What about our teachers, our firefighters, our police officers who are getting increasingly priced out of this market? And one of the best things we could do is permit 2 and 3 families by right in residential neighborhoods, because that is really housing for working people. I live in a 2-family. And I think a lot of folks in my generation, and particularly in the younger generations, that's going to be their first foray into the housing market. So that was taking into account the feedback we heard from the plan and looking at the ways we could find that missing middle, is what we call it, housing for middle-class people. Another thing that was mentioned in the flyer was that we would allow for a 0 lot line building. What the flyer neglected to leave out was the key word in certain places in the city. And in particular, that plan called for 0 lot line buildings in places like Broadway and Shirley Avenue, where historically that's what you see. And it was just calling for the zoning again to be aligned with what's on the ground today. But again, if we wanted to do that, It wouldn't get done by passing this plan. It would get done by passing zoning ordinance changes much further out into the future with council approval. The fourth thing, and this is, I think a particularly troubling thing because it took what could be a positive and turned it into a negative, which was it suggested that certain property owners would be required to first give the city their right of first refusal to purchase a property for affordable housing development. And that couldn't be further from the truth of what that plan is. It makes it sound like it's a requirement, but it's actually an opt-in policy. And so how this would work, again, I'm going to be a broken record here, but if the city council approved it at a later date after approving this plan, if they wanted to use that tool in the toolbox, the way it would happen is we would actually put out for sale a right of first refusal to property owners. So we basically say, hey, if you might be interested in giving the city the ability to consider purchasing your property for affordable housing development at a later date, would you allow us to buy that right from you for $4,000? Let's just say, let's pick a round number, but somewhere around there. And that's, I think, what the Salem figure was. So if a property owner wanted to give the city that right of first refusal, they would get $4,000 from us, and then at a later date, when their property's up for sale, they would first ask us how much we wanted, or if we were interested in purchasing it, and we would utilize the same valuation method as anyone else would. We couldn't buy it for below market rates. We would have to buy it at the current market price. So that's only for those people that bought that right, or allowed the city to buy that right. And then again, they would just have us exercising that right of first refusal. It doesn't even mean we would buy it. We probably wouldn't. But it's really about keeping our options open, because I think one of the really difficult things in Revere right now compared to other communities, like say Boston, Cambridge, or Somerville, we actually have a lot of housing that's still affordable for working people. But with each and every sale of new properties that's coming down the line, those properties get converted into new hands, often hands of landlords who might be looking to raise the rent significantly. And without deed-restricted supports, we have a lot of housing that's affordable for working people that will not be affordable for working people in 5 to 10 years. So again, that's just a tool in the toolbox that we could use, wait for it, with further council authorization at a later date, much later than after this plan is approved. And then finally, the raising of property taxes that it was in bold and red and underlined on the flyer. If we wanted to adopt the Community Preservation Act, which again is a small property surcharge, 1 to 3% of a property tax bill, and just for reference, looking at the average tax bill in Revere, it's about $5,400 a year. That would be $4 to $10 a month, okay? And that would be used for parks, open space, housing development, and historic preservation. And in addition to that property tax surcharge, it would be matched by state matching funds of anywhere from 20 to 50%. It varies every year. That the state would basically give us additional money to help support that property tax surcharge. But voting on this plan today will not create a property tax surcharge for the city. That would require, you say it with me, a future council vote following the passage of this plan, and then a citizen referendum that the citizens of Revere decided that they wanted to put a small amount of their monthly tax bill towards parks, open space, and housing development. So those are just a few of the things in a nutshell I wanted to address from the flyer. I'm happy to answer any other questions you have both tonight and for what I hope will be a continued conversation about this plan into the new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skorowski, for the, Thank you for the explanations. We're going to open it up to the city councilors now. I've heard from a lot of you that want to speak, so we're just going to go from my right all the way through down to my left, starting with Councilor Argenzio.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Skorowski. That was an excellent presentation, and it cleared up a lot of misinformation, and I'm glad you mentioned the flyer. I just want to speak briefly about this flyer. It was distributed to certain neighborhoods over the past week, and it discussed the housing plan. But one of the things that irritated me, it painted the city council in a very poor light, and it made some accusations. I'll read one thing here. The city council is now readying to strike another devastating blow to our zoning code by adopting a housing production plan while residents are distracted with the holidays. And it goes on down here to say that the council is self-serving and among other things. So it was very disturbing, and I got some calls from residents. Some were very nice. We spoke very intelligently. Some were irate, thinking we were pushing something through underhanded, and that's not the case, and I just wanted to clear up. And this flyer is anonymous. A legitimate flyer should have somebody's contact name, email address, phone number, where you could contact the person or people that put this flyer out if you wanted to discuss. So anything that comes anonymously has to send up a red flag to anybody that reads it. The author of the flyer could have very well called you or called one of the city councils, and we could have cleared up a lot of this information. And it needlessly worried and angered and agitated residents. On Saturday afternoon, I bumped into a couple of gentlemen who were delivering this flyer, and I had a discussion, one person I've known for years, and we had a very intelligent discussion about housing and development. And they said, you know, we're out here passing these flyers out. We should be home wrapping Christmas presents and what have you. Somebody put this thought in their head that this needed to be done because tonight we were going to do something underhanded. So I just thank you for addressing it. And as a ward councilor, you explained this very well. There are a few flashpoints here that I'm not ready or prepared to vote on this tonight. With your explanation, I'm a lot more comfortable. But things like legalizing rooming houses and the reducing lot size and 2 or 3 family homes by right, you know, I would like to clear up some of those flashpoints before the plan is adopted by the council. So I'm not prepared to vote on this tonight, but you certainly made me a lot more comfortable with this housing plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'm available to talk with you all through those particular points, both here and in the future. And just to address the elephant in the room, because it was anonymously written, I was not the author of the flyer.
Okay.
Just to put that out there.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Janino.
Tom, thank you for explaining this a lot better than it was. I'm over in Ward 6, and my neighborhood got hit with the flyers. Unbelievable. My phone's been ringing off the hook Friday, Saturday, Sunday, from 9 in the morning to 9 at night. I've gone over the story over and over again for at least 3 or 4 hours each day. You clear a lot of stuff up with us. I'm not comfortable voting on it yet. I'd like a lot more discussion to be done on it, to go back to the residents of Ward 6 and bring it to them and how it affects them directly. But I'm willing to work with you on it.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Guarino-Sawaya.
If possible, I'd like to hold my comment till the end.
Very well. Councilor Hess.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tom, thanks so much for being here and for your explanation on the housing plan. But like my fellow councilors here, I received a number of calls regarding the flyer, and I will say I was disappointed in the message that the individuals passing out the flyer, the message that they were delivering to residents. I got a call from someone last night. I'm in Ward 3. And he was talking about how the individuals, 2 of them, were dropping off flyers. They know this man. They spoke with him at length. And, you know, they had some interesting things to say about the current council. And I will just say I was very disappointed in their comments, talking about character and, and the overall makeup of the council, but I will say that. But I did also have a few great conversations with residents that did indeed get the flyer, and, you know, we shared the same concerns regarding the lot lines, the boarding houses, and as we talked about before, there's a ton in this packet. I think it's over 100 pages, but you and I had talked about this before, and there's some good stuff in there and some stuff that we would like to have cleared up if possible. Like I said, I had a great conversation with the resident last night. And, you know, when you talk about this type of housing and looking at this amount of housing that would be possible, it's one of the things that gets lost in this is the strain that this amount puts on the schools, and it puts on emergency personnel, and that's just something we have to think about with something like this. But thanks so much for your explanation, and hopefully we can learn and talk a little more. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Yaramillo.
Hi, Tom. How are you? So I just have a few questions for you, Tom. Tom, what would compel a city to create a housing production plan?
So it was created by state law to help cities comply with their 40B requirement to produce at least 10% of their housing stock to be deed restricted affordable. And deed restricted affordable means that it is restricted by a deed for a period of 30 years or greater at affordability levels of at least 80% of the area median income. So again, we're at 7%, we're dropping to about 5.5%. So we need to close that gap. So we're not making ourselves liable to get a 40B development, which means a developer can basically circumvent our zoning and do what they want as long as they produce 25% affordable housing.
So for folks at home who might be watching, or for those of us here who don't know what 40B means, can you explain what a 40B development is?
Sure. A 40B development is basically a development where a developer can bring a proposal that's at least 25% affordable, and they can make a case through what's called the comprehensive permit process to the state that they do not need to conform to the local zoning ordinance because the local zoning ordinance is making it difficult to produce affordable housing. So if a city does not have a certified housing production plan and they're below 10%, a developer can basically submit a comprehensive permit application to the state that says, hey, we're looking to build at least 25% affordable. We don't need to pay attention to local zoning. And it starts almost like an arbitration process between the developer, the state, and the city. And it's one that takes a lot of local control away of what can be built.
Thank you, Tom. And would it be safe to say that the state has enacted this law to try to preserve or create more workforce housing? Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, Tom, I have a question for you. What do you do for a living?
I'm a city planner.
Did you get trained in city planning?
I did.
Where?
First at the College of Charleston in South Carolina, and then the Graduate School of Design at Harvard.
So this is what you do. You help cities plan their cities. This is what you do.
That's what I do.
To my understanding, no offense to my colleagues, but I don't think any of us here are city planners. So I happen to value the work that you're doing here. Now, this is about workforce housing. And when we talk about workforce housing, you can imagine why a state is concerned about this, where our state has been losing population for a long time over the last few years, which means we lose revenue dollars, which means we don't have a vibrant economy, which means businesses have to close down and people get out of business and people don't have jobs. Now, I know you were here last week for something. Maybe we were celebrating one of your coworkers. Can you tell me why we're celebrating that coworker?
Because they are moving to North Carolina because this is an unaffordable place to raise a family. Oh, Texas. That's right. North Carolina was another story of a different City Hall employee. But yeah, Texas. They're moving to Austin, Texas. They're actually the #2 on this project that was helping me create this plan.
Now, did this person live in the city of Revere?
Yes.
Did they grow up in the city of Revere?
They grew up in East Boston. Their family has roots here and owns a home. And
From the area?
yes.
So how old is this person? Do you know?
Counselor, can we please move this along?
How old is this person?
Excuse me, move
You
the
can take the
question.
mic away if you want, Mr. President. I'm going to finish my line of questioning.
Then
How old is this
I will
person?
absolutely take your mic away. Thank
Couns-
you. You can challenge the chair if you'd
Counselor,
like.
you can get to the point by saying.
Counselor, excuse me. Everybody communicate through the chair, please. Absolutely not. Counselor, you're asking questions that are not relevant to this.
It seems pretty relevant to me.
The personal information of an employee is not
Okay.
relevant to this.
Okay.
Okay, so
Ignore
if you have a
ignore the question
question.
about the person's age. So what I'm hearing is a resident of Revere who seemed rather young, maybe my age, maybe younger, can no longer live in the city of Revere. And there's a reason for that. And you're telling us here on this dais that this housing production plan, which allows us to maintain our control of our zoning laws, because what you're telling me is that 40B development takes away our control, that this plan would help us do that?
Yes.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for the explanations that you provided. They were very helpful. There's some things in this plan that I really like. The section about reutilizing the space at Coolidge Street and Adams Street and trying to redevelop that to better utilize the land, I think that's great. Giving tenants an option to rent to own, I think that's great. Down payment mortgage assistance, I think that's great. So those are the tools in the toolbox that you mentioned that I could fully support. The other ones are concerning to me, even with the explanation that you gave tonight, because I understand that Somerville and Cambridge both did not vote favorably on a similar plan with the right of first refusal in it. And organizations like Small Property Owners Associations stepped up and felt like it was an overreach by the government, and they felt the need to protect those property owners. So those programs in Somerville and Cambridge at least failed. There was also, and I'd like your opinion on this, and correct me if I'm wrong with any of this, but there was a similar plan at the state level in Senate Bill 890 and House Bill 1426. Are you familiar with those?
I'm not.
Okay, they also included a right of first refusal. Went through, but it was vetoed by the governor at the time, again, for similar overreach, and it's almost like a soft eminent domain taking in some respects. So I know that you said it would be an opt-in. I'm unclear as to how it would all work, because the scenarios that I researched at least wasn't clear, and I guess this is a little too vague for me to support anything like that. So I would like to slow this down. I would maybe even like to see some of these tools in the toolbox omitted from the plan, and then maybe come up with something that we all feel good about. Thank
Okay.
you.
And with that particular item, I try not to model ourselves off of Cambridge and Somerville. And, you know, Salem is the one that did adopt it, which I think feels a bit more like Revere than Cambridge and Somerville. But we can be a little bit clearer about what our program would be and what it wouldn't be. I would also say, again, by adopting this, we would then get into more detail if that's something we wanted to pursue further. But hopefully I can clear up some of that misunderstandings before we make a decision to take it in or keep it out or whatever the case may be.
I'd appreciate that, because I think there is a lot in this that is vague. I think that you can give us that explanation because you're familiar with maybe how you would like to see these things go in the future, but I don't think that those perceptions may be thoroughly as portrayed in the document. So I think maybe we need some more clarification to come through here.
Understood. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for the clarifications of some of those items on this document. This weekend was crazy, but I had a lot of great conversations with residents that were really disturbed about the flyer. And it was really nice to have, get to know some residents that aren't in my ward, that are in other wards, so that was great. My concerns, just like the other councilors, there are some really good things in this package, and then some of the things that I'm concerned about, especially in Beachmont. Beachmont's near a train station. I fought 9 years to get permit parking so residents wouldn't have carry the burden of people coming from Swampscott and parking in front of their houses for 8 hours. I have a problem with that. Right now, I'm next to an illegal apartment house, which they really can't do anything. They've done what they could. The guy got fined $67,000, but it's still running. And I have a real problem with that because it's a nightmare. We have a really nice neighborhood, and then we have this in the middle of it. The other thing I have a problem with is Beachmont's so dense. Taking a single-family house and making it into a 2- or 3-family house for affordable housing. I have a problem with that because Beachmont is so dense. You can't even get in, and we had this discussion, you can't even get in and out of Beachmont now. The traffic is brutal. So I would like to see you dissect this piece by piece. I do like some of the things that you talked about tonight, but I'd really like you to dissect it so I can understand it better and the people can understand it better. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Tom, thank you for all your information and clarification. And as all my other councilors have spoken before me, I agree with every single thing that they've said. You know, it's just too much, too fast, and it almost sounds like, not personally, but you're trying to shove it down our throats to make this thing happen. And I know you have thoughts and ideas about doing things, and it's great that you do that. That's your job. But I think we ought to do it piecemeal. We ought to take things as we go along, as we accept them, then take it up, rather than one big package. I got calls from people that were so irate, just on this flyer.
All lies.
Just on this flyer, which I knew right away, if someone's gonna do a flyer like this, number one, they have no clue what they're talking about, and they don't understand what they're reading. And they're wannabes. So, and I have no clue who it was or who it is. But, you know, I just think we ought to take a step back, look at it as a big picture, take individual pieces that we like, and vote on them at that particular moment. But I'm not prepared to vote on it tonight. So, but I appreciate all the work you put into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Silvestri.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tom, thank you for your explanation. And like everyone said, you know, there's actually a lot in this that I'm okay with. And then there's certain things I would need more clarity. And with your explanation tonight, I think we can get through that. I don't want you to dissect this. I'm asking you to dissect this with us as councilors and residents. I'm asking you to let us help in the process, because I think we get to an end game faster than an idea comes, we are got to cut it apart, go back to the table, an idea comes, back and forth, and really nothing ever gets done. And I know it's your job to come up with the plan, and I know you stated clearly that after even passing this, we would still have to come before us again and get everything else passed. We all understand clearly, I believe, because many of us campaigned on it. We need affordable housing. We need affordable housing ASAP. I love the idea of allowing someone to add an addition on their home. How many homes have we been taxing at 2 and 3 families for decades? And then we made people to go around and rip out their family apartments. How many times? And now we're saying, okay, well, that was wrong. Well, now we're saying, well, we don't want to give them that apartment back. I say, give it to them back. I say, let's come up with an idea, because maybe if someone put a in-law and then only went up 1 unit, that would work. And usually those are families. And I know everyone has fears of big developers coming in and buying single families. The money's not in it. It's not gonna, their benefit is gonna far need for them to get into that game. I think these are gonna be done by families that need the extra space, that could use the extra income, and we could use the extra people in the city and like Councilor Yaramillo said, we're losing talent in droves because we can't afford it. And I know when everyone hears affordable housing, they think of some poor guy living on the street. No. 80% of City Hall could afford affordable housing. They would get it in a heartbeat. 70% of the city of Revere would qualify for some of it. That's the reality. And we all want to sit up here and come up with ideas of why we can't. But please, bring us to the table so we can come up with a reason of why we can. Thank you. I can't vote on this tonight, but I am willing to get you to the table and vote with you because we need to make this happen now.
Thank you, and I appreciate the note of partnership and the role that you all have to play and everybody here with us tonight and people watching on Revere TV have to play. I was asked to invoke the H word today, which is something that I see as a scarlet letter, not a badge of honor. Just because I'm trained in this work doesn't mean it's not something we can all talk about and work through together. Although I appreciate the point. It is something I'm trained in and have a lot of experience in and can talk with you all about best practices, but at the end of the day, it's about the community we live in and the community we're trying to build together. And I think we all play a role in that. We can have that discussion as a collective, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zambuto.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of things here. First off, the flyer actually was a benefit. I got a lot of calls. I got to talk to a lot of people. I think there's a lot of misinformation in the flyer. That's okay. Bottom line is I told the people I spoke to, there's no way I could vote for this tonight anyway. There's a lot in it that I can't support. There's some in it I can support. I appreciate you, Tom. I appreciate your passion for your job. I think you're a great city planner. I'm happy. When I first saw your resume and I heard and talked about people from where you came from, and I was thrilled that you were coming to Revere, and I still am. However, we have differences, and we've got to work them out, and hopefully this ends up eventually in zoning, and we do work on it. One thing I will say, I've been here a long time. I don't like to keep saying that as if I'm not thrilled to be here. I am. I'm thrilled to represent the citizens. I'm thrilled even when I get these calls when people are screaming at me. How can you be thinking about this? I said, well, this is a proposal that's before us, and we're looking at it. But my point is that I'm not one that's threatened by 40B, and I'll tell you why. I've been here a long time, and we've been threatened by 40B for a long time, and it doesn't come, and I don't expect it to. But again, this is a proposal that I think in the end, we may be able to come to some sort of an agreement, at least on my end. But I'm not willing to take a whole package to get the couple of things that I think are good. And I think, there's going to be a give and take here if we're going to come to a solution that I think is good for everybody. And I mean everybody. I mean a lot of those angry people that called me. I want to make them comfortable. And I hate to say it, but I didn't get any. Oh, no. I got one email from somebody that was a positive email in favor of the package as is. So, again, to everybody that's called me and everybody that's at home, we will do what's best for the city. At least that's what I intend to do, and I'm sure my colleagues feel the same way. So I'm sure this is going to be either put in committee or tabled or somewhere tonight, but it'll be taken up at a later date. And again, I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor, and I appreciate the sentiment. And just for what it's worth, for the record, I'm less concerned by a 40B development as well than I am concerned at the prospect of losing our young people and our seniors on fixed income. with the rising costs of housing in this city.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Guarino-Sawaya.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for all the hard work that you put in to this. I'm also not ready to vote on this at all. I've received numerous phone calls. Some were in favor, some were completely against, some wanted to pick it apart, which is what I think this council all wants to do as well. We all need to have a say in how this is written and how it's going to impact the residents. But right now, I really want to talk about the flyer that went out. It's really troubling, and the person who wrote the flyer really needs to wake up. I sat down and last night spent about 3 hours writing a very, very long letter that I wanted to read. I'm only going to read part of it today because I think it's best that I not say what I want to say. But as a Revere City Councilor, it's our responsibility to uphold the principles of respect, collaboration, and integrity that this council is entrusted to embody. The flyer that went out made residents very, very upset yesterday because it was making assumptions and presumptions about anticipated votes without the author engaging in meaningful conversation or understanding the perspective of others. Such assumptions do not represent the values of thoughtful governance, nor do they allow for an in-depth debate that is essential in addressing complex issues we face at any given council or subcommittee meeting. I am troubled by the attempt to arouse division and fear among the residents of the city of Revere, with statements that seem intended to provoke unrest rather than provide solutions. We are leaders. We are chosen by the people of Revere to guide the city towards progress and stability. Instilling fear or distrust undermines our roles and stirs unnecessary chaos in the community that we serve. I agree with everything my colleagues had said tonight. My last point will be, let us continue working together for the betterment of our city, putting aside all personal grievances for the sake of the common good. To our residents, please open your eyes and see the total picture, not the lies and innuendos that somebody wants you to believe. That person would have signed that letter. I assure you that our focus remains steadfast on representing your best interest and our best interest, since we live in the city of Revere as well, and fostering a council environment that reflects the best of what we can achieve together. Let us not be defined by division, but by our shared dedication to this city and its future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Permission to speak from the chair? Thank you. So it looks like the only thing that was correct on that flyer were our phone numbers. They did. Are we tied for longest last name, Councilor? No, but yes. So with that said, I agree with Councilor Zambuto. 40B has been used for nothing but more than a bargaining chip for developers. Yeah, it's a curse word, yeah. So I agree with that as well. There's this image that's been portrayed of the council that we rush everything. I wish I was the type of person that put the work that I do out in the public every single day, but nothing gets rushed up here. There's a lot of collaboration. We work with the clerk, we work with city departments, we work with the mayor, we work with each other. There's a lot of conversations that happen, and I understand the public wants to know that stuff, and it does happen, guys. I also want to thank the people that decided to call us, all of us. That shows trust, and I appreciate that. Even if you called to yell, which I think the majority of those phone calls were. But thank you for at least calling us and hearing us out. Tom, I do have a question. first right of refusal? Are we going to be landlords? Are we going to be developers? Are we going to be house flippers? What's the city going to turn into if that is a part of the plan that stays together?
That's a great question. So I think there's a few different ways that this could be done. I think it wouldn't be the city in anything. I think it would either be working with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to purchase those properties and then work with a consultant to be, sort of a leasing agent of sorts and making sure they're managing the process. But the more likely scenario could be something that we're going to be bringing in front of the council in January with a few different parcels of tax foreclosed properties where we're actually doing an RFP for affordable housing purposes. I don't think the city should be in the business of property development or property management. I think we should put it in the hands of those that can do that more effectively than ourselves.
Thank you. Councilor Kelly?
Thank you for the leeway. I just had a follow-up because I forgot to ask this. So the calculations of the 7% that we're at right now, does that include Revere Housing Authority vouchers, and does it include vouchers from other cities that are, that tenants are here that are on vouchers from, say, Malden Housing Authority or Boston Housing Authority? Are those numbers all calculated into that 7%?
If a property voucher is being used at a property that has a deed restriction within it, then it's being counted. So the Revere Housing Authority properties are the vast majority of our 7% of the stock right now. So if somebody is staying at the Coolidge Avenue development and they have a voucher in addition, then that's deed restricted. But if you just have a voucher, a Section 8 voucher, on a property that has no deed restriction, that's not included as part of the 7%, nor is it elsewhere in the Commonwealth. And the reason is because that voucher travels with the person, not the property. So that property is not restricted for affordability in perpetuity.
Correct. Okay, thank you. And also, just to follow up with Councilor Silvestri, I think that mentioned it, we do allow ADU units right now, accessory dwelling units in the city of Revere, correct?
We do allow them currently today. By February of this year, we'll actually have to come into compliance with the new state law that is going to be much more liberal in its interpretation of where ADUs can be put and what communities can do to prevent against it.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I'm going to just give leeway to Councilor Silvestri, and then we're going to open it up to residents. We also have one other item of business. Can I just get a quick show of hands for anyone that would like to speak on the housing production plan tonight? Okay, great. So let me just let Councilor, yes, ma'am. Councilor Silvestri, go ahead.
Thank you for the leeway, Mr. President. Tom, what happens if we do nothing?
If we do nothing, we will have that 40B issue, potentially if a developer comes and applies for a 40B permit, but Councilor Zambuda is not wrong, and that's probably a pretty rare instance. What is really the problem is that we're not setting ourselves in a position where we're creating more affordable and more workforce housing for the population that, again, the median household income in Revere qualifies for affordable housing. That means the average person in the city of Revere qualifies for affordable housing, and that population is going to increasingly be further and further away from the rents and the sale prices in this city if we do nothing.
Thank you, Councilor. I'd like to open this up to the public. When you come to the mic, please state your name and address for the record. Well, city employee, no, I'm sorry.
I am not speaking as a city employee tonight. I'm speaking as the vice chair of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, along with another board member, another trustee, Layla Pietri. So I'll speak first. I do feel left out. I was not visited by the Grim Reaper this weekend, so I was a little surprised when I came into work and heard all the ado. But I will be brief because I know a couple people want to speak. So like I said, I am coming before you all tonight as the vice chair of our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And as we all saw tonight, we see passionate, well-researched employees such as Tom, who come before this council time and time again to fight for progress and to fight for opportunity in this city. And time again, we are always met with last-minute campaigns of disinformation. Tonight's topic is singular. It is housing. And as a volunteer and as a resident of this city, I know firsthand the struggles that we face. And unfortunately, gone are the days of the quiet suburbia and long tree-lined driveways that we like to think of. Revere is one of the fastest-growing cities in the Commonwealth. We're home to major transportation hubs and a highly popular public beach. And with this comes traffic and density. Perhaps if Boston or the Boston Harbor broke off from Massachusetts, we could get rid of our traffic problems, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I want to paint a picture of what modern suburbia looks like in Revere. It looks like popular shopping centers like Northgate. It looks like an international airport. It looks like major train stations, hospitals, condos, apartments, multifamily homes. And while we all dream of a single-family home with a white picket fence, I, Claire, would have nowhere to live if it were not for the two-family home that I live in behind Mountain Avenue. I'm college educated. I make a decent living. It is public record what I make. And I live on the first floor of a two-family home. And my landlord, the primary occupant, a single dad with 3 children, lives on the second floor of my home. And because of this two-family home, I'm able to live in the city that I work in. I pay a fair rent to a small-time landlord, and I'm still able to put away a small amount of money for my future. Middle-income housing is desperately needed, and the strategies and options, keyword, outlined in our housing production plan is desperately needed. You may all recall page 18. It was on the flyer. This page suggests that the city allow 2- and 3-family homes by right in our residential districts, meaning a 2- or 3-family project would apply to our various authorities for a permit approval and follow the same building code that all of our other projects have to follow. And now I do consider myself easily scared. I still have a nightlight in my bedroom, but I fail to find any reason to be scared with the options and strategies laid out in this plan. The exhausting onslaught of fear-mongering surrounding affordable housing in Revere is extremely disheartening to young people who are trying to establish a life in this city. I am disappointed to always see emotion and misconception be weaponized against progress. As a voter and as a taxpayer, I want my tax money to go towards making the city a better place. I want affordable housing to be built where an empty municipal lot sits with easy access to a bus station. The antiquated arguments against these proposals overlook a fundamental truth. Housing is a human right. It is not a privilege. And I urge this council to remember that pledging to support the HPP's ideas does not mean an immediate and complete upheaval of our zoning code. As Subcommittee Chairman Zambuto knows very well, zoning changes require weeks of notice, they require many meetings, and they often invoke many residents coming to share their opinion. And as Tom mentioned, one of the biggest and most controversial proposals requires a citywide vote to be taken. The fear-mongering that we hear at these meetings halts progress, it keeps us divided, and as Councilor Guarino-Sawaya mentioned, it keeps us from understanding that we really are all on the same side. We all want the residents of Revere to afford to continue to live here. We want our children to afford to continue to live here when they move out, as I did a few years ago. And along with all of our other community members, I was at every meeting that this city held to gather input on this HPP. We had interpretation, we had childcare, we had free food, we had a Q&A session. I will say I did see Councilor Haas at one of those meetings. And I want you to know that the facts and the research has been presented, and I hope these facts emphasize the true scale of our housing crisis. We cannot risk losing our teachers, our healthcare staff, our bus drivers, our service workers, our city employees, or the young people who grew up here and are now trying to live on their own in this city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just want to let everybody know we have a hard stop in 6 minutes because we have to start our next meeting. So name.
And Layla offered support, moral support.
Okay, I work for
name and address, please, ma'am.
My
Sorry.
name is Layla Petria. I was living on 2525 Beach Street. and I work with the Right Street Motor Vehicle here in Revere. Okay. And also, I belong to CHAPA, and that's one of the things, and the Governor Haley, she signed a special grant for all the Massachusetts, and Revere is part of that. So I think we have to take an advantage what the governor tried to say, try to help all people of Massachusetts to get affordable housing. So I think Revere, this is the perfect time to try to be part of that. And with all planning, we try to do it, to get involved on this. So that's why we made the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and we're working with you guys to take an advantage what the Governor Haley tried to help for all Massachusetts.
Thank you very much. Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Brian Rose, 172 Kimball Ave. I'm a proud Revere resident. I'm here to speak in support of the HPP. I want to sort of give a face and a name to the crisis that we're sort of discussing. I made $71,000 last year. I'm educated, and I'm 37, and I'd like to not have to live with roommates anymore at some point. I'd like to start a family at some point. I'd like that to be here in Revere, if at all possible. And as others have mentioned, we're losing people like me. We are in a crisis. It's not just me. There's thousands of others like me who are both younger and older than me. I'm approaching my 40s, and again, I'm feeling the effects of this crisis, despite my education, despite my work history, despite all of this. And it's very scary dealing with the housing market the way it's become. And there's others like me who are bearing the brunt of it. And because we only had 6 minutes left, I'll cut it off there. But again, I just like to speak in support, and I've looked over all 149 pages. It's an incredible amount of research, and a lot of the potential solutions I think could be immensely helpful to people like me. And just thank you for your time, and thank you for tackling this issue.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Matthew Terrell, 215 Crescent Avenue. Hello. I am here in front of you today to ask the council to support this housing production plan, to educate residents who may not fully understand the importance of this plan, and to give a real-life example of the freedom this plan gives homeowners. When it comes to planning and zoning a city like Revere, I must say I really do agree with critics of this housing plan. I mean, we must look at the culture and the history and the fabric of our city. Unfortunately for the critics of the plan, this is where we differ in opinion and in facts. When I look back at the city, in the history and the culture of our community, it is not one of suburban sprawl and restrictive family zoning. It is not one of parking minimums and unwalkable neighborhoods. When I look back on Revere's history, I see that our city was built on a vibrant mix of affordable multifamily homes, like the triple-deckers you see down Shirley Ave. I see the single-family homes that were once summer cottages right next to turn-of-the-century apartment buildings. When I look back on Revere's history, I do not see strip mall after strip mall and commercial drive-thrus. What I see is mixed-use neighborhoods with diverse selections of ground-floor retail and so many recreations apartments. I see Stern's department store that once sat at the corner of Beach Street and North Shore Road, which would not be allowed today because of frontage requirements. Same thing goes with the original Revere Theater that sat right across from this building. Would not be allowed without a special permit. Or, even a bit further up Broadway, I see Reardon's, which once again would not be allowed without a special permit during frontage requirements. In fact, almost all of the amusements and buildings that once sat along Revere Beach would be non-conforming and require special permits. Now, Revere started its so-called suburban experiment less than a century ago, and just in the last 10 to 20 years, we are still seeing and dealing with the consequences. Prosperous cities require growth. This is a good problem to have. Unfortunately, our suburban-esque development dug us deeper into this good problem hole. As Revere has grown, restrictive zoning has limited the options for types of new houses and ultimately hasn't met the demand for housing. Home prices have skyrocketed, housing stock has not increased fast enough to accommodate the growth of the population, and longtime residents are being pushed from their homes. Now, you might be wondering, with all the developments along Revere Beach, Shirley Ave, etc., how can the housing stock not rise any quicker? The simple answer lies in the fact that parts of the city that are getting these developments only occur for a very small percent of the buildable area in the land.
Matthew, I'm so sorry.
Yes, I can-
I
yes.
apologize. I have to end the meeting right
Yes.
now. Just so you know, there will be public comment at the next meeting, so just sit tight. That will not happen. It won't take a long time to get there. We have one other matter on the subcommittee, and if it's okay with everyone, I would like to place that on file because we are having a public hearing on it. Is anybody opposed to that? And as far as the housing production plan, I would like to table it and keep it in committee. Does anyone have any problems with that? The housing production plan will be tabled to the next committee of the whole, and we will place the following motion on file, and this meeting is adjourned.